Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of El Pueblo Unido. I am with my lovely, amazing co hosts, Marifer and Alberto. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello, hello. It's September. Fall is coming. We have our coats.
It's the
Yes, we're
Burr
so excited.
months. It's the
It's
Burr
a Burma,
months.
exactly. We're so excited for today's episode. Our special guest, Kim Leung, will be sharing with us important information. Um, and then we also at Ponte las Pilas, you have a guest, Maria, will be sharing her story of last year's summit. And then in Latinos in Acción, we have our great friend Ramses. And at La Pinche Politica, we'll have another special guest. But yes, stay tuned. El Pueblo Unido will be right back. And we're back to El Pueblo Unido, to our favorite section between us three, where we discuss lo que nos importa. So, something that's been happening here across the nation is that the National Guard is providing an assistant eyes. As you, Marifer and Anna, have seen, they're ramping up their immigration rates. And from what I've seen, and you guys can give me some other information, is that the National Guard is providing logistics when it comes to those rates, either paperwork, driving. I don't know, Anna.
I did not know about the logistics. I've been mostly just seeing the videos and pictures. First, they were in DC. Um, you know, it's been a lot to watch.
Mhm.
It's definitely been a lot to watch.
Right. And they're also protecting ICE agents, especially in towns. Like we've seen that when they're being deployed in cities that are staunchly against these raids. So they're there to defend the ICE agents in LA and Chicago and DC. This and then correct me if I'm wrong, but I just saw this morning that the Supreme Court said that the raids could go on in LA indiscriminately despite concerns regarding background, racial profiling, etc. So, yes, we're just seeing the militarization of a civil society.
Yeah, and that can turn very bad, just because you when I think of the National Guard, I think a group of people that are going to protect when it comes to national disasters
Mhm.
or other incidents, but never to assist this type of administration.
This is definitely not what, like, this is not the job that we had pictured for the National
Exactly.
Guard.
Hmm.
Right. And then I remember hearing on NPR a few days ago that Trump tweeted something along the lines of declaring war on Chicago, which is, further drives that point home that unfortunately the people who are meant to serve and protect us, police too, but are being used to attack even like protesters, people who are um, uh, within their civil rights, civil liberties um, to watch and defend immigrants as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and like again, we encourage all our listeners to stay up to date, and then like keep an eye on the news.
Yes, stay informed.
Stay informed.
Um,
And stay
and
safe. And stay safe. That's very, very important.
right, especially in those cities mentioned, LA, Chicago, DC. Stay vigilant and protect one each other. In other news, I heard recently that Gilmar Obrego Garcia, um, as we know, was arrested, deported to El Salvador, brought back, and is now facing deportation once again, despite having the courts finding no reasonable claims or reason for his deportation. But this time around, they want to deport him to a small African nation called Eswatini. And I had to look for it because I've never respectfully heard of it. But to me, it's just mind-blowing that they are even deporting him to the correct hemisphere, which I don't know about you guys, just has proven that this administration is driving fear into immigrant communities, making a statement out of Kilmar saying, okay, well, we're going to do whatever we want and we're going to deport you to not even the same continent you're from. Do you got any thoughts on what's going on with Kilmar in his case?
Yeah, dejen al pobre hombre en paz. Oh my God, like he has gone through so much, and I'm sure there's is suffering and everything, but as you mentioned, like the administration is throwing everything at the wall when it comes to just dispersing fear to our community. And yeah, like you had to look out for that country. I'm sure if we ask people randomly, they will be on the same boat. Like I didn't know there was a country. And all the resources they're going to be spending for that, like all the tax dollars that are going to be involved.
This was a very informative, lo que nos importa with everything that's been going on in Georgia, in the whole country. But it's definitely worth keeping an eye on the news because it seems like every day there's something new happening. So just stay vigilant, stay safe, and stay informed. And we'll be right back with El Pueblo Unido.
Welcome back, everyone, to El Pueblo Unido. I'd like to introduce our special guest, Kim Leung with the Asian Law Caucus. She is a staff attorney, and we will have a very interesting and detailed conversation about birthright citizenship and why it's under attack and what it is. So, Kim, thank you so much for being here with us. It's an absolute pleasure having you here. I'd like to learn more about you and what the Asian Law Caucus is.
Thanks. Well, first I want to thank GALEO for inviting me to your podcast. To start off with introductions, Asian Law Caucus, also known as ALC, is the nation's first Asian American legal and civil rights organization. It's been around for over 50 years. I joined during the 50th year anniversary, so it's particularly memorable to me. At ALC, we believe in racial justice and community-centered solutions. So our legal strategy and our advocacy strategy is really informed by the voices and experiences of our clients, our neighbors, and our community members. I should mention ALC is located in, sorry about that, located in San Francisco. But our work is expands to different parts of the country. We also have staff in different parts of the country. So I'm calling in from Chicago, my home.
That's what I was going to ask. Where were you calling from? So thank you so much for letting us know. So as Marifer mentioned, you are a staff attorney, but a little expansion on that, you're a staff attorney for the National Democracy Initiative at the ALC. Can you please describe what does your job entail?
Yeah, so the Democracy and National Initiative Program at ALC, also known as DNI, lots of acronyms in the nonprofit space, as I'm sure you know. We aim to create a democracy that is truly inclusive. At DNI, we envision and strive for a future where AAPI and Arab, Middle Eastern, and North African citizens and community members and immigrants can be secure in their homes, in their neighborhoods, build shared prosperity, and fully participate in our democracy. So in terms of how we do this, our strategy includes impact litigation, policy advocacy, and also supporting on-the-ground efforts through partnerships with community-led organizations, including, I should mention, organizations in the state of Georgia.
Thank you, Kim. And yeah, all the all the work that everyone is doing at the Asian Law Caucus is very important. And I know this administration has come under fire. Right now, there is a big topic about uh, there's an attack for birthright citizenship. Can you explain a little more of that?
Yeah, I'm happy to level set here and start with first, what is birthright citizenship? So birthright citizenship refers to a simple concept that you are conferred citizenship upon birth. So it's a legal concept that upon someone being born, you are a citizen of that country that you are born in. And this happens in two ways. So first, you can get birthright citizenship by ancestry. So if your parents are U.S. citizens, for example, then when you are born, you are also a U.S. citizen. There's also another way, and this sometimes refers to, in a fancy Latin term, jus soli, right of the soil. So if you are born on American soil, then you are a citizen of the country. And I can use myself as an example. I have citizenship through both those avenues. I was born in the state of Michigan. My parents immigrated from China, and when I was born, they were already citizens. So I'm a citizen by the fact that they are U.S. citizens, but also by the fact that I was born in the state of Michigan.
And right now is under attack, correct? Which part is it?
Right. So right now it is under attack by the Trump administration through an executive order that President Trump signed the very first day of his inauguration on January 20th. To give some context, I defined birthright citizenship, but to give some historical context before I go into the attacks, just so we realize how unprecedented the attack is that birthright citizenship has been around for a very, very long time. It is enshrined in the U.S. Constitution, specifically the 14th Amendment. And even before then, it was recognized in certain states because it was adopted from English common law. So there's just this really long, over 150 years of history where birthright citizenship has been the practice and the principle in our country. And to be clear, it still is. It is very much still intact today. What is happening, though, is that Trump's executive order tries to get rid of birthright citizenship. And specifically, it tries to get rid of the part of birthright citizenship that's conferred by being born on U.S. soil. So they're not challenging the birthright through ancestry, but challenging birthright through being born in the U.S. If your parents are not citizens or not green card holders or legal permanent residents. So the Trump administration is threatening to strip away the citizenship of children who fall under that category, which there are many, many children and many people who fall under that category. Many of us have citizenship by the fact that we were born on U.S. soil.
Thank you. And it's been a while since I took maybe a civics class, a constitution class, but I remember clearly that, like you mentioned, it's in the Constitution's 14th Amendment, but there has to be a ratification process by Congress to change anything in the Constitution. So what we're seeing by the Trump administration, is it a legitimate way to I guess, get rid of birthright citizenship? Should our people be concerned that we could see the end of birthright citizenship through people being born on American soil?
Yeah, so that's a really key point that your question touches at, is that executive order, presidents of the United States are not permitted to do away with the U.S. Constitution. That is the law of the land. So because birthright citizenship is enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, President Trump cannot just sign an executive order and do away with it. But, I've heard, so another way to think about it, I've heard people refer to executive orders as a wish list or a letter to Santa. I've heard that description as well. And I think it's a helpful description because it really, we, the people, need to understand that he does not have that unilateral authority, that there are channels if you want to amend the Constitution, but executive orders is not that channel. So it is not a proper channel.
And again, thank you for explaining that, because that has helped our community understanding. We have received concern calls and messages from people thinking that is, it's done away with it. Now, that is one, but what other constitutional concerns could be doing away with birthright citizenship?
Well, I think it gets to sort of my earlier point is that while I think I can offer a good amount of assurance, given what I had just said earlier, the U.S. Constitution is a law of the land. No president, not even President Trump, can change that. And so while I offer that assurance, I think it is at the same time very problematic that we have a president of the United States issuing executive orders that is in direct conflict with laws that are grounded in the Constitution, grounded in history, and laws that are here to help and protect us. So I think to the extent that, I know today we are focusing on birthright citizenship, but this is also connected to, the wide array of other executive orders and policy issues that I understand your podcast, other episodes touch on. So I think it is very concerning. I do want to, if I may, back up and talk about sort of what we are doing to protect birthright citizenship. The executive order is out there. It is not the law. It is not in effect. But to the extent that it signals a priority of this administration, I think it's important to talk about our strategy to protect birthright citizenship. So I'll go into that and explain that the reason why the executive order is not in effect, it was signed in January 20th, is that organizations and community members responded by legal action. So lawsuits were filed, and these lawsuits were, the plaintiffs in these lawsuits are nonprofit organizations with members who would be affected by this executive order. There are many different lawsuits that was initiated after the executive order was signed. But I will mention the one that I know best, which is the one that Asian Law Caucus is a part of, because when this executive order was signed, we were at the ready, and we filed a lawsuit with our partners, ACLU, Immigration Rights Project, ACLU Maine, ACLU New Hampshire, the Legal Defense Fund, State Democracy Defenders. We all joined together to challenge this executive order. And in effect, because of the litigation, there are at this point multiple national injunctions saying that this administration cannot implement the executive order for the time being.
Thank you so much. This is so informative. And I know we've talked about, the concerns, and, it would be a very lengthy process for the administration to actually, get through to what they're trying to do. But what are the implications if birthright citizenship, as we know it, changes or is revoked?
Yeah, the implications are very concerning and far-reaching. So I explained what the executive order says, but I think it's such a big deal that it warrants taking pause and being like, wait a minute, who does this affect? Because it affects so many people, right? The executive order is broadly written. It says that children born to not only immigrants without legal status, but immigrants with legal but temporary status are also affected. So I want to break that down, because what does legal but temporary mean? Well, this implicates a lot of my neighbors and some of my family members as well. People who are here lawfully because, for example, they may be applying, they are in the process of applying for asylum, or they have a humanitarian visa, or they have TPS, or they have DACA. This applies to people who are here on work visas, from professionals with H-1B visas, to laborers, to our farm workers. This applies to people who are lawfully here on student visas, our PhD students who maybe have been here for many, many years and are looking to start a family here. So this is so far-reaching that I tell people, if you are not directly affected, I bet that you know somebody, your neighbor, or you know somebody in your sphere that would be hurt by this executive order. And I think, sometimes it's easy to, I'm a US citizen, born a US citizen, and perhaps it's easy to take that for granted. But when we are faced with this executive order, it really shows us what that means and what we can lose. So the children who are affected by this executive orders, they potentially will have no status, meaning they might be stateless. So there might be no country that recognizes their citizenship. And if they don't have US citizenship in the country that they know and were born in, they don't have access to critical health services, to certain critical benefits. They don't have, they wouldn't be able to get a passport and travel. They wouldn't be able to get the right to vote, and certain job opportunities would be entirely, not possible for them, despite them being in this country and contributing in this country. That is the implication of this executive order. And I just want to emphasize that this is not just about immigrants. This will radically affect all of us. Because what it's essentially doing is saying that your US birth certificate or my state of Michigan birth certificate is not a valid document proving my citizenship. And then a lot of times we present our birth certificate as a proof of citizenship document, and that is not the case anymore. And so there is this administrative nightmare about how you're going to change the system and administer it. And how is this going to affect even US citizen parents who are having a child? I heard someone helpfully describe, the consequence of this. When somebody has a child, if this executive order is enacted, it creates a mini immigration case for each child that's born, right? Because they don't have citizenship just automatically by birth on US soil. This might trigger an interrogation process about their parents' family status or their parents' family status, since we're now only relying on citizenship through ancestry. So it really leads to an invasion of privacy for everyone.
Wow. No, I hadn't thought about it as an invasion of privacy aspect as well. But it got me thinking, like, how far back can an administration go? For example, if someone who was born on US soil to undocumented parents, for example, has a kid, and for some reason this goes through, like, would that child be stateless and then their parents stateless because their grandparents were undocumented? It just seems like it's so convoluted and involved that I think it would be just a nightmare administratively, politically, and on the states as well.
Absolutely. So the executive order as written says that it should be enacted February 19th onwards. So the administration is saying it's not retroactive. But I find that very not comforting because the administration is also asking the courts to find to redefine essentially the 14th Amendment. And so while the executive order has a specific and somewhat arbitrary, I would say, date on the executive order, if the administration gets what they asked for and gets an interpretation of the 14th Amendment that is in line with the executive order, what's to stop them from changing the date? I think it's important to know that it is, as written, not a retroactive order, but at the same time, the threat is still there.
Noted. Thank you for that clarification.
Do you have any message that you want to send to our listeners who are worried that any changes to birthright citizenship will affect them or someone they know?
Yeah, first, I want to assure community members who are affected or whose families and friends may be affected is that the litigation is thus far working. Like I said, the executive order is not in effect, and it's not in effect anywhere. So no matter where you live in the United States, this should not be administered. Meanwhile, I acknowledge the legitimate fear and anxiety families are having, families that should otherwise be very excited to welcome a new member of their family, because this lawsuit is ongoing. But our litigation team is dedicated to defending the 14th Amendment every step of the way. And while I can't predict what will happen in the future, the 14th Amendment says what it says, and it is clear, and the president cannot take away birthright citizenship just by an executive order. I offer that assurance, but meanwhile, I recognize that this is not, when we're talking about a president who doesn't respect the U.S. Constitution, this is not just a fight in the courtrooms. I think that there is room and a role for all of us and a necessity for all of us to get involved. So whether that's educating family members, taking to the streets as Chicagoans did this past weekend, we have some Georgia partners who are talking to the school board, to their local school board, to say, hey, this issue, birthright citizenship, affects students. It affects young people. We want to pass a resolution to affirm your commitment to birthright citizenship. So I just want to emphasize that there is an important role that we all have to play here. In terms of, lastly, I want to make sure I speak to people who are directly affected. If you have any questions about birthright citizenship and how you may be affected, Asian Law Caucus is available. We have a webpage that I'll share with you where we're providing up-to-date information about this issue, about the litigation. On that same webpage, there's also instructions on how you can get in direct contact with us, and we are happy to talk with folks.
Kim, I actually had a follow-up question that goes more into the personal side. You mentioned at the beginning of this interview that you are a product, if you want to call it like that, of birthright citizenship. This is something that affects you personally. So how have you been feeling? How have you been grappling? I mean, not just from the professional standpoint, and what you can do as an attorney, but personally, how have you been doing?
My parents came to this country fleeing an authoritarian regime. I grew up hearing, like, we're Americans and we're so proud to be Americans, and they plant many small American flags in our garden. My parents are just so patriotic, and that's who I grew up with. And maybe that explains why I'm doing the work that I am doing today. So I was always told to be proud that I am an American citizen, and I'm a citizen by birth, a birthright citizen. My parents might not have used that particular legal vocabulary, but they were very proud. They are very proud of that fact. But I think it took me some time, right, from childhood growing up in that atmosphere to really understand, like, well, what is it that I am proud of? What is it that makes America special? And what is it that's different about this country than the country that my parents fled? Well, I think, not to sound super nerdy about it, but there's just 100% truth in this. We have a U.S. Constitution. We have separation of powers. We are, we the people do have power in a country and in a democracy like ours. And so when I think about, my parents were always instilling in me the message of, you should be proud. You should be proud of being an American. I think they didn't quite, I would say that when I was young, I didn't quite understand, well, like, what exactly, like, am I proud of? But now I can confidently say, and in these times, I can confidently say, I know what I'm proud of. I'm proud of the history of this country, from Dred Scott to Wong Kim Ark. I'm proud that about the history of the 14th Amendment, where birthright citizenship is enshrined. These words have meaning. They are our policy, and they have power. So I am very proud to be, and humbled to be in this space with you all, and to be part of the lawsuit defending birthright citizenship.
Thank you, Kim. I have a question. What legitimate legislative actions can be advocated for?
Well, I think that birthright citizenship is necessarily defined federally. So I think that the only way to change birthright citizenship, like I said, not through executive order, but by amending the Constitution. In terms of what folks are doing on the local legislative level, I know that I know of certain states that are proposing legislation and resolutions that affirms birthright citizenship. And like I mentioned, in Georgia, there is a coalition of young people, students, and parents who are trying to pass school board resolutions affirming the principle of birthright citizenship, because what that is essentially signaling to your state and local representatives is that this is important to the people. And so we need to talk to our Congress people to let them know that this is important, and we want to defend and maintain birthright citizenship.
Thank you. And I think you mentioned this earlier, but what are some resources available to others to educate ourselves and our community about birthright citizenship? I believe you mentioned your website, but if you know of anything else, please.
Yeah, our website is a good starting point because it will also link to other resources. And like I said, it directly, for people who think that they may be directly impacted, there's a way to get in touch with us by, to get a consultation with us to talk about what this might mean for your family.
Okay, thank you so much, Kim. And yeah, we'll make sure to add all the website information that you have shared with us, all the important information. I really appreciate when you share. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do want to uplift, because I am speaking to Georgians. I do want to uplift that. I'll also share the link to the coalition of folks who are doing the school board resolution. So that includes Georgia Youth Justice Coalition, and they are circulating a petition. And if you sign up for that petition, you'll also get their updates.
I had a feeling it was them.
Yeah, we'll make sure to share as well in our episode. But Kim, again, thank you so much for sharing, for keeping our listeners uplifting, continue positive. And as you mentioned, this is in the Constitution, so we should be positive that everything will turn out right.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And
Thank
El Pueblo Unido, we'll be right back. Y regresamos en El Pueblo Unido con la sección Latinos en Acción. Y al lado is my great friend and coworker, Ramses Jimenez. How are you, Ramses?
Hola, hola, muy bien. Gracias por tenerme, Alberto. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, so our Latinos in Action has been very busy. This past Saturday, our team, along with our leadership department and GIL of this core cohort, we were in Gainesville, Georgia, where we were going door to door, keep informing how the community to register to vote. You know, if they have not been active in the last few elections, there's a list that people could get deleted out of the Secretary of State. Ramses, you were there with a group of people in Gainesville. Tell me, how was the day? How was the vibes?
It was amazing seeing so many Latinos being, motivated to come out and inform their community is a sight that is nothing better than that, right? So we actually we knocked on 650 doors and had so many conversations with the community that we actually also had as many of those volunteers want to be involved more, which is amazing. That's what we always want.
Yeah, great turnout. As we said, it was a Saturday, so it's always, people are either resting or they're working, right? Immigrant families are hardworking families, but we make this event very easy for them if they wanted to register to vote, because they can do it digitally. So we also link in the description. If your family member would like to know if your voter status is active, we'll put the link and you can check. If not, you can register through the link digitally. It will be through the Secretary of State. Along, we also were carrying literacy for people to learn more what's happening in Georgia. On my end, we were making phone calls. Again, same area, and maintaining everyone informed. Some of my best conversations were a lady that just moved to Georgia and didn't know that she needed to change her voter registration. So, we were able to help that. Again, a great conversation. Ramses, have you had any conversations where people tell you like, you said that there was volunteer involvement? Have they told any other communities that we should be present that you hear?
Yeah, of course. We need to be in any community that we can be to inform them of what's going on with the voting, and that there's actually still elections going on this year. I've been hearing a lot from other people saying, "Oh, wait, there's an election going on
Yes.
right now," and we have to let them know. For many of us, there is an election for the Public Service Commission, but for most of us, there will be mayors, city council, and anything else that may be up for grabs. But we have been seeing that people are not as informed right now, and that's what we're trying to change. Trying to get more people to go vote.
Yeah. And I like that energy. And then we all use all that community involvement into just being out in nature. We also have our Estamos Afuera hikes in collaboration, GALEO and LCF. And we have our last one coming up on Stone Mountain. We'll also be sure to post it. Keep following us on Instagram, Facebook. But I'm excited about that one. All the summer hikes were fun, but now we're on the sunset a little bit later. Ramses, are you excited?
Yes, I'm excited. So, the amazing thing about this hike series has been that we're putting Latinos in spaces that we're usually not in, right? The more that we use these spaces, the better chance we are of keeping them. So at least so far this year, we've had 6 hiking events and over 125 people have attended those hikes. But that's not just it. We've also had about 18 Vamos Pa Fuera events that include, litter cleaning, plants planting, and things like that.
Little libraries building.
Little libraries where we had 60 people come out and help us install it as well. So it's been amazing seeing so many Latinos be involved with con lo de afuera, right? We need to be out there more. And as you said, many of us are working all the time. We don't have time for that type of mental health help. Which, being outside is, I think for being out there 20 minutes is the equivalent of like one depression pill or something like that.
Right. Yeah, and it's very healthy. We have received great feedback, and again, we're excited for our last hike of this series, but we'll continue working around the community. But yeah, thank you, Ramses, for joining me in Latinos en Acción. And this is Latinos, all the team that were in Gainesville. Thank you so much to our volunteers, our people making phone calls. There you go. Let's raise the roof. And this is Latinos en Acción. This is El Pueblo Unido. We'll be right back.
Bienvenidos a Ponte las Pilas, el segmento del Pueblo Unido que los mantiene informados sobre toda la información de desarrollo profesional y de liderazgo de GALEO. Hoy queremos hablar sobre nuestro evento más grande del año, la conferencia, la cumbre de liderazgo, Ponte las Pilas, que va a ser el 25 de octubre. Vamos a tener sesiones de desarrollo profesional, policy y segmentos en español conocido como poder y conocimiento. Ana, esta va a ser tu primera cumbre. ¿Cómo te sientes sobre este evento?
Realmente estoy bien emocionada. Estamos en proceso de organizar todas las clases que vamos a tener y como una persona, como si fuera externa, puedo ver todo el beneficio que se pueden llevar las personas de esta cumbre, lo que le llamamos el Leadership Summit. Y yo creo que más que yo decir qué beneficios pueden tener, sino tenemos una tercera personita con nosotras, María García. Ella es una participante de años pasados, y si bien quieren escuchar cuánto beneficio tiene esta cumbre, pues queríamos traerles una participante de años pasados para que les pueda explicar. Así que, María, bienvenida.
Muchas gracias, buenos días, con mucho gusto. Estoy aquí para ayudar y apoyar al pueblo.
Muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. Y entonces, ¿cuántas veces ha participado de la cumbre en años pasados?
Claro, en el 2022 tuve la oportunidad de asistir a mi primera cumbre de liderazgo, la cual me pareció bien organizada, con buenos exponentes, pero en mi opinión no hubo sesiones en español. Y yo, como tengo limitaciones a este idioma, entonces me fue imposible poder entender y comprender, pues las sesiones. Eso fue el 2022. En el 2023 no pude asistir por causas de fuerza mayor, aunque me hubiera encantado. Pero regresé el 2024. El 2024 no me defraudaron, ¿eh? Fue de verdad súper bien organizada. Todas las sesiones en español. Pude entender completamente todo lo que yo quería, captar. Entonces, muchas felicidades. Para mí fue estupenda, de gran aprendizaje.
Nosotros siempre escuchamos al pueblo.
Gracias, María. Y me alegra que pudimos traer estas sesiones en español para que personas como usted entiendan y se mantengan informadas. Y mencionó que el año pasado fue su cumbre favorita, o por lo menos vio una mejoría porque ya hubo esa oportunidad de aprender en español. En general, ¿cuál ha sido su sesión favorita? Y me puede decir un poco por qué.
Bueno, sí, fueron de dos exponentes los que me impactaron y me llenaron de información. O sea, me fue muy bien. Entonces, la primera fue la abogada Pía.
Ah,
La abogada Pía nos habló acerca de la importancia de tener una carta poder y, y la importancia también de tener un testamento bien organizado. Porque fíjense que yo no sabía, dentro de mi ignorancia, yo no sabía que si mueres intestado en este país, pues a tus pocos o muchos bienes que tengas se va al gobierno, o sea, dejas desprotegidos a tus seres queridos, por los que más has trabajado para obtener esos bienes. Entonces, pues yo pude obtener esa información de ella, esa información muy abundante y muy sustantiva para mí. Y otra cosa fue el señor, se me olvidó el nombre de esta persona, pero fue el señor Rafael de la organización Fact Chequeado.
fact chequeado.
Sí, de él también aprendí que nos habló acerca de la desinformación en las redes sociales. ¿Cuál es la importancia de no creer todo lo que vemos en las redes sociales? Porque lejos de informarte, te desinforman. Entonces nosotros como hispanos, o sea, pues cualquier cosita que sale no sé, de inmigración, de lo que sea, entonces, o sea, ya estamos muy nerviosos, o ¿cómo va a pasar esto? ¿Qué tenemos que hacer para protegernos? ¿Cómo es posible? Entonces él nos dijo que podíamos ir a visitar redes pues confiables y visitar a personas que estén bien informadas, pues, para que nosotros no nos llevemos estos sustos.
No, y lo que me gusta y lo que he notado a medida de que estamos planificando la cumbre de este año es que son cosas que quizás no son cosas que usted aprendería en un salón de clase o no iría a una escuela para aprenderlas, son cosas que son importantes, pero
Claro.
no son necesariamente uno... pues viene para estas cumbres para poder aprenderlas y cosas que usted misma no sabía ni que tenía que aprender, las pudo aprender y corríjame si estoy equivocada.
No estás equivocada, señorita Ana. Fíjate que gracias a esto yo pude asesorarme bien con esta misma abogada Pía. Me hizo favor de hacerme por lo pronto mi carta poder, pero estamos en vías de que nos haga un testamento. O sea, no, para nada es muy importante todo esto, la verdad. Y el pueblo, nuestra gente debería saberlo también. Cuanta más gente podamos reunir, mucho mejor para todos nosotros.
Así que las conexiones no solamente fueron en la cumbre, sino se extendieron post cumbre.
Así es, así fue, sin duda.
Me alegra.
No, por favor, Marifer.
Sí, me alegra que podemos traer estos expertos a ustedes, a la comunidad, para que aprovechen aprender y también porque son profesionales que extienden sus servicios en su idioma. Entonces, eso queremos repetir este año. ¿Y qué le diría a las personas que aún están considerando inscribirse para Ponte las Pilas, la cumbre de liderazgo este año?
Sí, precisamente por lo anterior que acabo de mencionar, pues imagínense, pues estamos bien desinformados. Entonces se va a hacer un caos entre nosotros mismos los hispanos, que tanto temor tenemos por las redadas y todo lo que se está haciendo en este país, el gobierno, todos nosotros. Entonces, informarnos con redes que sean verídicas, que nosotros podemos estar tranquilos, porque es muy importante.
Pues, ¿hay algo más que quiera añadir?
Sí, yo quiero decir a todas las personas, a toda la comunidad hispana y no hispana, que por favor consideren inscribirse a esta cumbre de liderazgo, ya que podemos aprender de ellos, de todos sus exponentes, y que no tengan miedo, que nuestra fuerza laboral hispana contribuye mucho a este gran país. Entonces, anímense, anímense. Yo les aseguro que no se van a arrepentir.
María, muchísimas gracias por su tiempo y por, esperemos que haya ¿verdad? Disfrutado las sesiones pasadas y esperamos verlo en futuras sesiones. Y al resto de nuestra audiencia esperamos verlo en nuestro Leadership Summit. Ponte las pilas el 25 de octubre y las taquillas ya están disponibles, ¿verdad, Marifer?
Sí, si nos están escuchando o viendo más bien pueden escanear el código QR o también para los que nos están escuchando pueden entrar al enlace bit.ly/ponte las pilas Summit 2025. Va a haber toda esa información también en nuestra página galeo.org y en nuestras redes sociales. Haga clic en donde diga ponte las pilas y puede comprar sus boletos. Aprovechen de una vez porque ahorita tenemos nuestro descuento para todos nuestros tickets para la cumbre y termina el 1 de octubre. Entonces, ahorita es el mejor tiempo para comprar sus boletos y recuerden, incluye un desayuno ligerito, almuerzo, estacionamiento, todas las sesiones que puedan por cada segmento, o sea, Professional Development, Policy, Poder y Conocimientos, todo en español, de 9 a 4 el 25 de octubre.
Y por ahí puede ser que en el próximo podcast le traigamos otras sorpresitas más que estamos tratando de buscar. Como mencionó María, todos los años tratamos de poder añadir cosas que sean de beneficio para nuestra audiencia y este año no va a ser la excepción, así que esperamos traerle más cosas que incluirían su boleto ese 25 de octubre, así que muchísimas gracias.
Gracias, María.
De nada, y ahí nos vemos, primero Dios, la próxima.
And we're back. Hola, hola, friends. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Soy Resten Jiménez, aquí con Mamá Conforta, La Pinche Política. And here with the special guest, Alberto Reyes, joining us for today. How are you, Alberto?
I'm doing good, Ramses. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to learn what's been happening, Georgia, across the nation. You know, you've been taking this role very professional, so we all been learning a lot.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you're learning and something's coming out of it, right?
Yes.
So I don't know if you heard, but last week, Georgia was shaken. Not just Georgia, but immigrants across the community and the country, right? A massive ice raid at the Hyundai mega site here in Georgia Coast was brought out. And we're going to talk a bit about what it means for all of us. Did you hear about it over the weekend?
Yes, there's something that starts showing up on my news feeds, and then slowly start learning more about it. Kept receiving messages, emails, asking more questions. You know, it was all sudden. But yeah, let's go discuss more about it.
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit of context from it. So on September 4th, 2025, around 9 to 10 a.m., federal agents from ICE, Homeland Security Investigations, accompanied by our very own Georgia State Patrol, FBI, ATS, and DEA carried out what's being called the largest immigration raid in U.S. history at a single location, with additional activity reported in Rincon and Chatham County. And it happened, as we talked about it, at Hyundai's new meta plant in Elabel, Bryan County. You ever heard of Bryan County before?
First time.
Same here. And it's just outside of Savannah. And many of us, know that this site has been a huge investment for Georgia, producing electric vehicles. And next door is actually a massive battery plant under construction with LG Energy. Mm-hmm. And from documents being filed, a search warrant was filed last Tuesday in the Southern District of Georgia, which only identified 4 people specifically to be searched at this warrant. But, as they usually do, they arrive with a substantial personnel and equipment with different intentions than that of the warrant. Just getting 4 people with that many people is not right.
Yeah, they're definitely an overstatement if they were for originally only 4 people to arrive with this type of convoy. And one thing that I keep seeing was that Governor Kim was praising the when the plant was building as one of the biggest manufacturing projects here in Georgia and everything. And as you mentioned, now that state officials are helping in such rates, so it's a double-sided event that it was very, very bad over this weekend.
Yeah, and thinking with the FBI, DEA, and ATF, you think somebody is in there hoarding drugs and selling them at the Hyundai plant or something, right? With that much
Right.
police force. But during the raid, about 475 people were detained. And most of them weren't direct Hyundai employees, but rather workers for contractors and subcontractors. So, and from all the people that were taken, most of them were South Korea, but there were also people from Guatemala, Colombia, Chile, Mexico, Ecuador, and Venezuela. And 300 of those people were South Korean nationals. And from some of the witnesses and workers, phones were being confiscated. ICE agents pressured people to sign papers, and then heavily armed agents used intimidation tactics. And they also describe workers being physically beaten, ICE using tear gas, and helicopters, drones, military-style vehicles surrounding the area. And then the doors were barred. Workers could not leave and were threatened with force. Witnesses described chaos, workers hiding in air ducts, others jumping into a nearby pond to escape. And of course, construction at the battery plant was temporarily shut down. Hey, but no worries. EV production continued. That's the most important thing, right?
Right.
But
let's not affect the companies.
Let's not affect the bottom dollar. That's what they were worried about, unfortunately. These raids, you would think that ICE is doing workplace checks, but they are more of a militarized operations carried out against civilian workers that ultimately left more than 470 families coming home from school or work, wondering what will happen to their loved ones.
Yeah, as you mentioned, and it was contract based, so there was no mentioning of who was the contractor or how can they go through this type of procedure. But the people that were affected were just honest, hardworking people that were doing, like a job because there was a need for it. And as mentioned, when the officials tell them to stop, the contractor, and I know we mentioned Hyundai, and they're also to blame, but there are a lot of moving parts. But unfortunately, all the media and the news is focusing are on the individuals.
Exactly, and that brings us to our next point. So Hyundai plant also has a documented history of labor violations and safety failures. Many of the organizations that work there have been trying to put a light to it. And just this spring alone, 2 workers were killed in preventable accidents. But as we're mentioning, instead of holding those accountable, these raids are only adding to a troubling pattern of neglect and abuse, where the workers are the ones that bear the consequences while those in power evade accountability. And we've seen this time and time again. It's production over workers. And unfortunately, the South Korean government had to react strongly, and they called the raid sudden and harmful. But they actually struck a deal with Washington to repatriate workers. And more than 300 South Koreans are actually going to be released to return home. But Hyundai also said that those detained were not direct employees and promised to investigate their contractors' hiring practices. But Homeland Security Secretary Kristen Leung defended the raid, saying it would not stop foreign investment in the U.S., but that any company doing business here has to follow the U.S. immigration laws. But I guess it all depends on what kind of company you are and how great you are at going with the current administration, right?
Yes, true. And it was funny when I saw the news. I saw that probably a week ago or 2 weeks before, the South Korean president met the U.S. president, and they had a conversation about U.S. investment in manufacturing, as is been praised that is the new field, and yet we see that all these could affect all the workforce, right? So we got the job report in August that were not very positive. So we're still seeing the negative impact of that. And again, we focus all on the individuals, that were trying to just provide for their families and everything. And youth had a number, but it's just bigger than that because it expands to spouses, children, relatives that depended on them. And yet some of the companies might not be held accountable for their actions.
Fortunately, and for many of the Latino families, hearing this brings up fear, anxiety, and solidarity. And even though most of the workers were South Korean, it's still this big of a raid reminds us of just how vulnerable immigrant communities are, no matter if you do have proper documentation. And I don't know about you, but many of us grew up seeing and reading stories like this happening. My mom hid from INS back in the 90s in cardboard boxes. My dad was lucky enough to have been sick that day. And many of our families have similar stories. But like, no matter where you're from, whether you're Mexican, Central American, or from anywhere else, this is a story about how quickly lives and livelihoods can be shaken just out of nowhere.
Right.
So what can we take away from this, Alberto?
Well, one thing that, after seeing the news and after this conversation is just to keep urging our elected officials to have a more streamlined approach if they want to protect the workforce. There was no need for a militarized convoy or anything to approach like that to bust the doors or anything. And another thing that I can think of is keep our community informed, stay civically engaged, vote, and something else that you would like to share?
No, of course. But for me, this just tells us that immigration enforcement can strike anywhere, including the heart of a multi-billion-dollar project. And as you can tell, this is more about your immigration status. The race reveal an inhumane system that criminalizes immigrant labor, while billion-dollar companies still profit. And ICE actions have torn through our community, leaving our families unsafe, uncertain, and afraid. But as you said, staying informed and standing with each other, demanding dignity, fairness is how we keep our comunidad strong. But if you, Roberto, or anybody else out there wants to help those people that were taken, organizations like MESE, MESE, have been at the forefront of this raid, and they need our help and support. So families right now need legal assistance, financial support, and community solidarity. And at the bottom of the show, on our captions, we'll have 3 ways that you can take action. But for now, if you or someone wants to help or report ICE activity, you can call 912-429-7951. And if you want to donate or volunteer, you can go to www.migrantequity.org. And that way you can directly help those that are helping those at the front line.
Great information. And we'll have the resources for our community.
Thank you, Alberto, for joining me. And thank you all for joining me in La Pinche Política. I'm Ramsés Jiménez y nos vemos pronto, pero por favor recuerden, there are more than 91,000 Latino-owned businesses in Georgia, and Korean facilities employ over 17,000 people here in Georgia. So tenemos poder. Acuérdense, somos el Pueblo Unido, and we'll be right back.
And we're back to El Pueblo Unido podcast. Thank you to our guests, Kimberly, Ramses, and Maria. But before we end, we have all the update that you guys need. So we are still on registering to vote. So if you need to find out your voter registration status, go to this link, joja.vote. Galeo OVR to find out if you, family member, would like to stay informed.
Yes. And like we've mentioned maybe a million times on this podcast, just because we're so excited about the summit, the Ponte las Pilas 2025 Leadership Summit is back October 25th. We have amazing tracks in policy, professional development, and informational sessions in Spanish. So whether you are attempting to be more informed regarding policies that affect us today, especially in the state of Georgia, or looking to improve your resume, networking skills, land that job, we are here to make sure that you have that skill set that you need. So we are promoting our early bird special that ends October 1st. Come join us. We have lunch, we have parking, we have pictures. And I hope to see you there at St. Luke's Presbyterian in a few weeks.
And last but not least, we have our Hispanic Heritage Month luncheon, celebrating our amazing culture. We have that on October 15th at the Crown Plaza Hotel. It's not too late to buy tickets. It's never too late to buy tickets. So go ahead and buy those on our website. And if you need more information, you can follow us on social media. We have our Galeo Impact Fund social medias. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, TikTok, YouTube, the sorts.
Yes.
And we are also on the Galeo web socials. We have our Galeo at Galeo.org on LinkedIn, Facebook, and X. And we also have I Am Galeo on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so there is no excuse that you are not up to date with the most recent Galeo information. And if you really want to know more, you can also message us at our Galeo emails, message us on LinkedIn. We are more than happy to provide more information about all things Galeo. Thank you, Alberto. Thank you, Anna, for another wonderful episode of El Pueblo Unido. Again, guys, if you want to stay up to date for all Galeo and Galeo Impact Fund events and newest information, follow us on social media and visit our website at galeo.org. So, Alberto, Ana,
Marifer, thank you so much.
y recuerden, amigos, el pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
Bye, everyone.